Okay, we are live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, of a very special guest, returning guest. It's Matthew Ehret. Last name is spelled Ehret. And you will see his very popular Substack if you're watching this on Rumble, Rockfin, or X. And it goes by the title is Matthew Ehret's Insights. And I was sent him some information. I've been researching the Knights of Malta. I've done a bunch of recent shows. And I came across one of his more recent articles, and I was like, oh, we should talk about this because I've done a lot of research on Peter Thiel myself. He's done this. If you're seeing this is the title of something he wrote late 2024. Title is Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, Two Sides of One Magic Trick. And I think Magic Trick is a good apt title for what these guys are up to. We don't know. Musk is heavily involved in this transition to the new Trump administration, 2024, and Thiel has his tendrils all over the Trump administration as well through Vance and other people. And this new technocracy that you see in the background, there's Trump being inaugurated, and you have all these literal tech behemoths, probably is better than giants. So you have the head of Apple, head of Google, you've got Musk, and you have Zuckerberg, all there in a row. Oh, and Bezos as well. Don't forget him. So they were all there either pledging a loyalty or fealty or I don't know what you call it, but they were there right there in the second row in the background. So I think that, so discussing this, I think is important. Matt and I talked way too long ago in 2022. We covered transhumanism and his other research. I think it was the Canadian Patriot website, which I'll also put a link to. And he's had some of my guests on, the Collins brothers, who do excellent work into UFOs. And I also interviewed, after I talked to him in 2022, I interviewed his wife, Cynthia Chung, and she had a book at that time. And the title of that book is Empire on Which the Black Sun Never Set. Really interesting research. They do great research, great researchers. I keep running into them on so many different subjects. So check out this research, guys. Do yourself a favor. And it looks like they just put out a new documentary about two people I'm interested in. I'll be talking to Courtney Turner very soon about them, about this whole Plan B and some of the strange concepts. But you'll see this here if you're watching this. Check out this documentary, which I haven't watched yet. Full title is Like a Phoenix, The Death and Rebirth of America. And that's also a Canadian Patriot. But long intro, but I'm glad to have him back. So Matthew Ehret, welcome back to the show.
Hey, William, always a pleasure, man. And yeah, like you said, the more I've plunged, I didn't think I was ever going to plunge into the depths of these mystery cults. That wasn't sort of my thing for a very long time. But as I realized, you kind of have to make sense of things. Your work kept on hammering me in the face as well, left and right. So I'm glad that we're touching base again and sharing notes. So yeah, it's thank you for the very kind introduction, and I'm looking forward to this chat.
Yeah, likewise. I mean, there's a lot here, and I didn't understand that this article that you wrote about Musk and Thiel is part of the second volume of this 3-volume Revenge of the Mystery Cults, right? So it's
that's it there. If people are watching their computer screens right now, there's a little image of it with my press release featuring the covers of volume 1 to 3, and volume 2 has the little Rosicrucian cross thingamajig in the middle. It's called Rosicrucian Golem, and it has 4 figures. One of which being Nikola Tesla, which was sort of my entry point into a lot of that research, was, the question of, is Nikola Tesla the most awesome genius that's been marketed to me as sort of like almost like a more than mortal type of figure who is the greatest genius ever, probably invented, like everything. Or was it a big smokescreen? Was I given a big wind egg of propaganda that actually carries no substance? So that was my first question that turned into the book, volume 2. But along the way, I couldn't ignore the Tesla 2.0 software upgrade, which was and is Elon Musk, which operates on a very similar occult formula of mass propaganda, and with the same sort of transhumanist, or back in Tesla's day, there was no transhumanism. It was still eugenics that Tesla himself openly endorsed robustly, with a lot of very fascist Nazi occult connections that I go through in my book, which didn't disappear after World War II, but carried on in a slightly rebranded transhumanist veneer. And Elon is eyeballs deep in the stuff since he was a little kid, being generated by the daughter of the former head of Technocracy Inc. in Canada, who went and became one of the richest white elites of Pretoria, South Africa during the earliest phase of apartheid. So he really benefited a lot by that apartheid sort of neo-Nazi structure of government. And Elon's sort of entire destiny was charted out. And of course, the other two figures are Charles Darwin and Sir Isaac Newton, two other members of the Invisible College, which took on that name as a Rosicrucian takeover and transformation of England into an empire centuries and centuries ago that Newton was a member of, Darwin was a member. So yeah, and Peter Thiel, his life kind of completely parallels on many, many levels, including the South African front since his childhood with that of Elon.
It's incredible when you really think about it, these connections. And there's actually a connection between Tesla, Musk, and Trump, because Trump's uncle was responsible for Tesla's papers right after Tesla passed away.
Yeah, that's part of what they used to create the mythos around the Trump-Tesla connection. And, you've got a lot of add-on scenarios that have been baked onto the model. One of which being that Trump's kid is a time traveler, that was using Tesla tech to move through space and time. That because there's a lot of like. It gets a bit silly. People will use.
I haven't heard this yet, so this
no,
is news to me.
It's out there.
But I'm not surprised. But that you wrote in this article, about Elon Musk and Thiel, that Elon has this kind of rags to riches tale. Like he came to the U.S. with nothing and scraped his way through, and and that's not close to the truth, right?
It isn't close to the truth. And just to be quick, just to wrap up a thought that I think I should probably do quickly. Trump's uncle, John Trump, was responsible for looking at the papers after, like the Tesla papers and patents after Tesla died in this 5-star hotel in New York where he lived for his entire life. As the richest, highest end hotels is the only thing Nikola Tesla would accept living in from 1898 until his death in 1943. Only 5-star hotels. Right. So even him, there's a certain mythos similar to that of Elon as being, rags to riches, having just worked, and, Tesla had to shovel ditches, even being the greatest genius in the world. He had to shovel ditches because the establishment just wanted to crush him. But it's like, no, his entire adult life, he had a lot of support from very powerful, high up shadowy forces that are tied to the Morgans, the Astors, the entire operation that was bringing in the Anglo-American special relationship at the turn of the last century, and was, again, only living in the richest of 5-star hotels, right? So you've got that these stories that are baked into to win our hearts over to the underdog type of archetype that we all kind of like just really want to root for. And John Trump, by the way, also, even though this is ignored, whatever he thought of it, his official writings about the Tesla papers after he went through them, because he was part of the Vannevar Bush network at MIT, was that it was a lot of flaky garbage. He was like, there actually isn't a lot of real science here. So people try to make it sound as though he was using all of Tesla's great research and absorbing it, into the machinery that Trump became sort of privy to early. No, I don't see any evidence for that. I think that the real geniuses in the case of Tesla who made the discoveries were not Tesla. I think that from my research, whether it's Marconi or William Roentgen or even Thomas Edison, who has been very maligned, all three of these men have been highly maligned as the bad guys of the story that we've been fed. They were actually the ones who were actually being destroyed by JP Morgan, Rockefeller, and were fighting in opposition to this occult takeover of America. And they're the ones whose inventions, patents were largely co-opted and then attributed to this cardboard cutout character, this eugenicist figure named Tesla, whose idea of what the world should be looked a lot like what Elon Musk wants, as far as a world run by a managerial elite of scientific, grandmasters who would manage a depopulated, but yet somehow perfecting abundance embracing world order. So it's very, very nice words, but in terms of the practical thing he wanted, as sort of what would make that happen was a scientific dictatorship of a master class of elites. And I go through a lot of those connections in my book, taking it through the upper echelons of the British, of the Anglo-American occult establishments that were very closely connected to Tesla, including those who were using Tesla's tower, that were sending messages, secret messages from not pro-German spies in Washington during World War I that were sent to the German high command during World War I, including the information needed for the sinking of the Lusitania, which both Aleister Crowley, Tesla, and his best friend, this official George Sylvester Virek,
right,
played a very big role in transmitting that information to the Germans to enmesh the United States into World War I. And Virek continued to be his best friend, lived with him practically for months on end in his hotels, and was a hardcore vampire promoter, seems to be tied to the Knights of the Golden Dawn, and was the official Nazi representative to Washington, D.C. From 1932 until he was put in jail in 1941. And that's like Tesla's best friend. He devotes poetry to this guy.
I didn't know that Tesla and Virek are friends. Virek's a really interesting character.
Oh,
so
yeah.
He's the publisher of The Fatherland and some of the early Crowley writings. And also there was writings from the guy who wrote Traum Novelle, right? The guy, the inspiration for Eyes Wide Shut, all wrote for Virek. Virek's a really interesting guy.
I didn't know that. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I was reading his work.
Schnitzler. Schnitzler's his name. Sorry, I couldn't remember. Traum Novelle Schnitzler. Like, there's a publication that has Toe Megatherian Crowley. I see him on the cover of your volume 3 here. So I'm definitely interested in reading it. But yeah, Virek published both Schnitzler and Crowley in the same issue of Fatherland.
Yo, that guy is a sick mofo. Like, I've read now enough of Virek's material. His poetry is just this murderous, sociopathic, homoerotic poetry that he's like putting forth, that when you know what the Crowley rituals are, you're like, that's exactly what he's putting into his poetry.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah. And what's ironic about Virek, right, is you I'm sure totally you're aware of this, but this guy became sort of the tempo creator for a whole school of conspiracy research that, like, he trained Eustace Mullins. Eustace Mullins was a very close friend and prodigy who was positioned to be on the McCarthy program, or the McCarthy committees, before he went on and became like this, exposure. This guy who again, like he inspired David Irving and so many of these granddaddies of modern conspiracy research. But Virek is the guy who first exposed the Jewish Protocols of Zion Masonic conspiracy to take over America in his 1932, Woodrow Wilson and E. Mental House, The Strangest of Friendships book.
Right. Yeah. No, this is incredible.
Yeah.
I didn't know the Tesla connection. That's really something else, because Crowley writes a lot about Virek and the Fatherland and the writing, and his kind of his as an asset of the British Empire.
Yeah.
What is it? Confessions, right? So he writes a lot about that. But it's interesting. And now that you write about vampirism, it makes me think of a guy by the name of, the German would be Evers, but it's Ewers. Did you come across his last name?
Ewers.
Yeah, he was a fiction writer, but he was in New York at the time. I think he knew Virek, knew Crowley, but a friend of Hitler. So it's a tie between Crowley and Hitler during World War I. Eventual. So Evers became a member of the Nazi Party. It's Ewers, writing vampirism. So it's like Virek and Crowley, who is sympathetic to blood drinking and this kind of stuff. But yeah, it's an interesting tie between Crowley and Hitler, who, after Hitler died, Crowley infamously said, "Before Hitler was, I am," right? So it's a play on the New Testament, Stephen.
Yeah, right. Well, with the whole Crowley thing, there's what's his name? Oh, I'm forgetting the name of the author who did Crowley, Secret Agent 666.
It's a professor. Yeah,
I'm looking at my bookshelf here. Anyway, there's a great book, Secret Agent 666, on Crowley's role as a British agent, masquerading as a anti-British Empire agent, sympathetic to like German, Irish, Indian resistance movements, but his alliance was always to the British Empire. And it really goes through so nicely. His that's what first put me on the trail of him and Varek as having this very close bond as operatives that got the Lusitania sunk and so many other things, and also made allusions for the first time to Crowley's Telefunken Tesla Tower. There's 2 of them in Long Island that then got demolished when certain detectives affiliated with the U.S. Naval Intelligence got wind of this operation, this fifth column thing inside of America, put forth, and it's been declassified. People can read these 1917 exposés that were, again, classified, but only recently declassified, outlining the Tesla, Varek, not Tesla, sorry, he wasn't brought in by name, but the Varek Crowley networks utilizing this Tesla tower that then got demolished because, again, it was a perfect communications channel between German high command and these Americans.
Wow.
And yeah, like, oh, and also Crowley's Thelema, like he had several points of contact with high-level Nazis through the Thule Society, the New Templars, and the Fraterna Saturnitas.
Right.
That was sort of the spin-off of the OTO that he took charge of after Theodore Royce died. And in 1925, he had one of his core guys, JCR, what's his name? A major of the general of the
JFC Fuller.
JFC Fuller, yeah, that guy, who was also the head of his or a grandmaster of his Argentum Astrum Lodge. And he was the back channel between Crowley and Hitler directly. He was like also Oswald Mosley's lieutenant.
Yes.
And
he was investigated by the Brits as a kind of fascist sympathizer. One of only 2 British people invited to Hitler's 50th birthday, I think in 39 or 38.
Right.
And friends with he kind of trained some of the German high command on tank warfare. It was Javicius. I can't remember the general's name. The other name of the author of Secret Agent 666 is Richard Spence. I've had him on a couple times.
That's him. Oh, you had him on? Oh,
yeah, he's really good.
I'd love to talk to him. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, cool. Funny thing is, like, I haven't talked about that book, but he actually did the kind of research that proved that the U.S. knew Crowley was a British agent, right? So that's like one of the prime, among a great book. Highly recommend that book, 5-star. But that's like, you can key in, like, he basically confirmed the U.S. knew. And like you said about Crowley, sympathetic for the Irish, he had a very famous guy in the New York. It's in the New York Times. You can still read it, of him going out into, the Hudson Bay and ripping up his passport and proclaiming loyalty to the Irish Republic. But it's funny, with one of his Scarlet Woman at the time. There's pictures of her with their mark of the beast on her chest and stuff like that. But
there's this whole weird occult satanic nexus through the Golden Dawn in Ireland too that was subverting the authentic resistance movement. And I think W.B. Yeats was a big player within that. Roger Casement, who ended up getting caught when he was like clearly working with German occultists and was acting like he was an Irish patriot. He got caught and he got hung. But you got all of these networks tied to Crowley's Golden Dawn, who are subverting Irish like genuine Irish republicanism at that time and turning it into something much more manageable as far as because if you go to Ireland today, like, there's not a lot of Christianity anymore. Like, it's you might get it in some of the rural areas, but they've really done a number on the Irish through a lot of abuse. The decades of lead of Gladio in Ireland really messed up people. Again, unreconstructed Nazis being deployed as paramilitary, groups managing infiltration of different resistance movements after World War II was over. So Ireland got hammered, and they've got this weird occult fetish or obsession with like elves and fairies and pixies and druids, and all of this stuff is really present in the minds of your average normal Irish person these days, because everyone needs spirituality, like they need something to have faith in. But that's what's been really baked into them as being what they associate as their identity, which has a lot to do, it seems, with the myth makers around Yeats. W.B. Yeats, sorry, I should say, and these other Crowleyites.
Right. Yeah. Contact between Yeats and Crowley. I don't ever remember whether it's Yeats or Yates, but
that's
William Butler.
We're confusing Francis Yates and William Butler Yeats, and our minds get a little.
Understandable. But yeah, these connections are really incredible. Like it's just something else. I didn't know Virek and Tesla were friends. That was a mind blower. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But it makes sense. Virek has an interesting history too, because he had 2 kids. He claimed to be an offspring of the Hohenzollern Zollern kind of elite German family, like an illegitimate child. But he had 2 kids. One fought for the U.S., and the other fought for the Nazis. So it's
well, one of his, I think Peter Virek was a co-founder of like the neoconservative movement in
he was around until recently, is my understanding.
Yeah.
But really fascinating history.
Mm-hmm.
So Tesla to Musk. Musk has these ideas that are kind of shielded. And much like you write in that article, Thiel kind of tried to go on Joe Rogan and play the kind of everyman, but he really isn't. If he's a Straussian, and I mean, you wrote some of the stuff that he wrote for the Stanford Review. It's like, it reminded me of like Dulles or something like that. Like this whole secret technological elite is going to run everything and keep secrets. Like he's like advocating for the mechanics of secret societies. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, have you read his Straussian moment essay?
Well, I just got the pieces of it from your article. This article.
Yeah, I cite a lot of I take tons of quotes out of that thing. But yeah, it's such a high value essay, and he wrote that thing in 2007. So I had to it took me a while, but I finally read it, and then it got me to appreciate that he has a more sophisticated quality to him than Elon does. He's able to think on a higher level by far than Elon. And in it, like you said, he's self-identifying very clearly with the Straussian, the followers of Leo Strauss that took over American conservatism during the Cold War. Strauss, that's a photograph of him, was a friend and admirer of the Nazi crown jurist Carl Schmitt, who justified the Enabling Act, the creation of a modern Führer structure of governance as a response to the emergency of the Reichstag burning down, which was sort of the Germany's 9/11 back in 1933. So Strauss was an admirer of, a correspondent of him, also. He was somebody who generated several generations of again neoconservatives. So Richard Pearl, Paul Nitze, who do we have? Donald Rumsfeld was a follower of Strauss. All of the worst of the Paul Wolfowitz were Straussians, and these are guys who believed in a secret doctrine known only to the inner elites. And Strauss was using Plato, so he called himself a Neoplatonist, asserting that, there was this public doctrine of, abide by virtue, pursue knowledge, do the good that Plato talks about in his dialogues. But then there's the secret doctrine that that was shared only by Socrates to his favored initiated students. And Strauss had his own favored initiated students over the 40 years he was teaching at the School of Chicago, and he was a Rockefeller Foundation, grant receiver as well. And that was basically the idea of the noble lie, and the idea that human beings are actually wicked and evil at nature, and they must be ruled over by control of the mechanisms of their passions, of their desires, that are fed as lusts by an elite that can give them sensually what they want in order to keep them more addicted to the belief in the shadows of the cave wall. And that's what he believed that the role of the elites that he was going to train were going to be. And Peter Thiel talks quite at length about the secret doctrines as he understands it of Strauss, but also of John Locke, of Thomas Hobbes, who all promoted a secret doctrine. In the case of Locke, he talks about how Locke had a secret doctrine of Jesus's secret teachings for his favorite disciples and a public teaching for the uninitiated. So he directly situates himself into the Gnostic subcurrents of world history, which has been at the heart of pretty much everything bad that I could map out over the last 2,000 years. Is this Gnostic, infiltration that of nominally Christian organizations, or even the creation of nominally Christian orders that have been designed to simply advance a very satanic agenda based upon this outlook. So again, Thiel goes through it in remarkable detail, and I encourage everyone to take a look at that.
And they use that abbreviation X, like we're on X right now, streaming on X, and it's kind of unnerving that this kind of vague statement of like what X is, and it just left me uneasy about that guy. So he knows a lot more than his public, his public statements or his public image really is. I think it's a little scary.
Well, you got Elon Musk having just tweeted out on October 10th, 2023. His tweet was, "If X is successful, X will evolve to be the collective consciousness of humanity, or more accurately, the human machine collective." That was a literal quote I just read from a tweet from Elon Musk about his concept of what X should be as the harbinger of a new phase of human machine hybrid collective unconscious evolution, which again has a lot of archetypal themes developed by another occultist who comes into these books quite a bit, Carl Jung, who is an occultist first and a psychologist tertiarily. I don't even think he's a psychologist. I think he's an occultist using psychotherapy language to try to normalize occult initiatory ceremonies for the masses. But that's coming in Elon Musk's language, and Peter Thiel is citing Locke's idea of what X represents as part of the language of symbol, like the symbolic language for the elite, as representative of a specific domain pertaining to human nature, which has to always be kept off limits from any type of thinking by the uninitiated, because it causes us to be too. If we allow our minds to ponder certain questions, deal with certain facts of reality, if we allow that for the masses, they will become too unruly. There's going to be too much disequilibrium. And so there's this agreed upon whatever rivalries there seem to be within the oligarchical machinations of the leading families. There's various rivalries, right? It's like a den of sharks a lot of the time. They'll get together as long as they have something to work towards. But as soon as they get what they want, they start stabbing each other in the back. But there are these points of common agreement, of which this X thing that pertains to both the theory and application of certain questions pertaining to man and God and nature. It's like the intermediary between human beings and the creator, that just have to always be kept off limits, no matter what. That's not negotiable. Right. Like the Nicene Creed for the oligarchy is like what this X thing is.
Right. No, it's incredible. I mean, they have pretty expansive ideas. I thought it was interesting, too, that he mentioned echelon. That was kind of like the conspiracy boogeyman of my growing up, the 80s and 90s. Don't you know that there's a secret thing recording everything? Echelon. But he mentioned he knows about echelon. When this was published, when was it published? His work on Strauss, do you recommend?
Well, it was published in 2007. However, it was based upon a conference that he co-funded in 2004, which coincided with the creation of Palantir as a rebranded form of the All Systems, or what is it, All Information Awareness program that John Poindexter, another Straussian, had tried to put online in response to 9/11, and it failed. And they basically took all the functions of that total information awareness, and then they said we need a more private sector veneer because people aren't really drinking this Kool-Aid so readily the way we've branded it. And so there was this conference on Strauss and the Straussian way of organizing society that he bankrolled and participated in. And then 3 years later, he was asked by the Stanford Review that I think he also founded. Or no, he founded the Stanford Libertarian Review. But so he was asked to then publish his thoughts and what he delivered as official remarks at that conference in the form of that essay.
Wow, yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah.
And so this echelon, like I'll just read this. This is like his ideas. Instead of the United Nations filled with interminable and inconclusive parliamentary debates that resemble Shakespearean tales told by idiots, we should consider echelon, the secret coordination of the world's intelligence services, as the decisive path to a truly global Pax Americana. So the way to peace is a secret coordination of a high-level software system or computer system like that. Like that should scare people. Like literally, and Palantir has been deployed, right? I mean, it's deployed all over the place. Some places we don't know, but the intelligence services, I know it's used in like the police in Louisiana, Gaza. The AI is used to like target people. Like, wow, it's incredible.
Oh yeah, I mean, total information gathering on every level. Wall Street banks, the biggest Wall Street banks, use that. The Pentagon, it's a huge contractor, like you said. It's and of course, they're itching, they're yearning for biometric transform, systems that could accumulate even more data. And again, it's very similar to what Elon Musk's grandfather was a part of in pushing this Technocracy Inc. thing back in 1930. Well, he got involved with it officially in 1936 and ran it in Canada between 36 until he went to jail in 42 for being, again, a little bit too fascist for, the tastes of Canadians at that time, because he was calling for a scientific takeover and overthrow of the Canadian government. That was literally the mandate of Technocracy Inc. And part of their manifesto, their Bible, which calls for a North American technate, is also information gathering that could measure everything that is experienced by human beings that they see as being soulless automatons. And that's part of also the definition of human beings within the Technocracy Inc. Bible, is that human beings are just the sum total of our flesh and our desires. There's nothing more to it. And thus they're very behaviorist, because they're like, whoever wants power just has to control what causes people to have fear of pain or desire for pleasure. And that, again, they're very explicit on these points, as every fascist is. And yeah, they call for a total information systems gathering thing so that they can create a new type of economy of credits that will be allocated to every so-called citizen, that will be based upon the amount of energy that goes into making the things you consume and how much output you create as an individual cog in a machine. But it requires a lot of data to be read, which they didn't have technology to do back in the 1930s, which it seems like that's been a big animating factor behind the growth of Silicon Valley, which I think was made up primarily of a lot of unreconstructed Technocracy Inc. followers that were very much aligned with American intelligence after World War II, and which Palantir is serving as a, the actualization in many ways of that.
It's incredible. I mean, there's so much going on. Have you followed Mark Andreessen and kind of his Techno-Optimist Manifesto?
No, tell me about it.
Yeah. Well, he's kind of like on the, he was on Rogan. He's done the tours of all these high level, but he said a lot of interesting things. One is he told Joe Rogan that people from the Biden administration came to him and said, there's no need for any more startups. We're going to run AI through 3 different companies. And that's one of the reasons why Andreessen supported Trump. Also, for people who don't know, Andreessen started Netscape back in the day when browsers actually were worth something. But he's a VC guy. But he put out this Techno-Optimist Manifesto, which is kind of his tech overlords' plan for the future, which kind of overlaps with these guys. They're thinking about it, but it's Gnosticism. It's not Christian. Let me see if I can bring this up. It's something I think you'll find and I'll put a link to it in the show notes, but I've done a show on it with John Brisson, but it is just something else about how these guys are thinking. He's very powerful. Andreessen's a billionaire, and also with tons of companies and stuff like that.
No, I didn't. Yeah, I'll definitely read that.
Techno capital, not utopia, close enough, becoming technological Superman. That's scary. Patron saints of techno-optimism. It's almost like the Gnostic Mass or something. Like He's got all these names. Some I know, some don't know. But Nick Land is a full-on Crowley lover. But
really?
Yeah. Nick Land's a whole nother story. But this is really incredible. Like what he thinks and how he's going to do stuff and non-Christian and references.
It really aggravates me and hurts my soul a little bit when I hear about these things, because, like, personally speaking, I am somebody who philosophically is a technological optimist, because my philosophical view is every baby is good. Humans are wired fundamentally to be good. That's our true nature. The oligarchy, and even Peter Thiel talks about that in his Straussian Moment. He cites the Hobbesian view that all babies are born wicked, that our fundamental nature is to be wicked. And because we're wicked, we cannot ultimately self-manage if we don't have an enlightened elite that's been through gnosis that can sort of lord over us as sort of gods above that we don't get to think about or challenge or anything or understand. That's like the consequence politically of believing everybody is naturally bad by nature. So for me, I'm like, okay, well, I think that the outgrowth of problem solving of human beings trying to think about the future, the well-being of their kids, involves a natural effect of making discoveries, leaping over the limits to growth, having better technology at the service of our needs. I believe that. That's what I believe. And having thus, in my mind, having more people at a higher quality of life is a good thing, not a sign that we're a virus. I see that as like a sign that we're doing something right. But then the oligarchy, they take these things that I feel closely about, and then they turn it inside out, and they act like they're the technological optimists. And they're like, well, yeah, if you want to be a technological optimist, you have to be prepared to integrate with machines and make super babies. And it's like, well, wait a minute.
Like, right. But it is interesting. You see the similarities in Andreessen's thought too. So Hobbes is negative. He starts off with this thing published 2023, fairly recent, from Walker Percy. You live in a deranged age, more deranged than usual, because despite great scientific and technological advances, man has not the faintest idea of who he is or what he's doing. So you guys are at a loss. My ideas will fill that void, right? Just like these other characters. So you see the same thing. Like, so the technocracy is there, man. It's writ large.
And just the clouds, the light in the clouds motif as well. Like they're really trying to pass off this heavenly angelic vibe of a new religion.
It's ready to share too. We can just share it wherever we want.
Oh,
all
yeah,
these places. Now this is well worth reading. There's we can get into specifics, maybe another show or something like that. But it's interesting, like his ideas of life, non-Christian, right? So nothing like that. Enemy statism, authoritarianism, stagnation, love soul, Nietzsche, all these other caring, you know. And then he's got a future for everything. We owe the past and the future. It's time to become a techno-optimist. So he wants us all to become a techno-optimist. So anyway, well worth reading.
Well, it's like they've got this sense of, there's like no sense of humility at all. Like they almost feel like they are gods because they're privy to being part of this inner club that they are the gods that will be the ones privy to control the levers of human evolution as it integrates with machines and whatever else. But it's like they don't like, is never the case with these feudal sociopathic, overlord wannabes, is they never apply their own logic to themselves. There's something other. They talk about human nature, but they don't talk about themselves when they say human nature.
Right.
So I get that vibe from this wannabe high priest, this new world religion.
The Invisible College is active in Silicon Valley too. So, I mean, this kind of past becomes present is all here. And these guys, they're like almost eugenicists or Darwinists. Like, we're going to make the decisions to maximize and, make the techno Superman. It's going to be us. So you're right. It's kind of like this arrogance, like mad scientist mentality. They all have it. Thiel has it. Musk has it. Andreessen has it.
Yeah.
So people need to really be careful. These guys, the brain side, the brain interface that Musk has, I don't know. I mean, he's acting, he's got some Gnostic Novus Ordo Seclorum on his shirt and his statements, right? So he's got these kind of Virgil, doesn't that go back to Virgil or something like that?
Oh, was that originally like Virgil, the author of the Aeneid?
Yeah, Novus. Really?
Well, that's interesting as well, because Virgil was a propagandist for Rome becoming an empire, right, and having to create new sacred myths for the Roman psyche, for the zeitgeist, to believe that Rome is, the heir of Troy and has this divine sort of mandate that they had to just create out of nothing. That's where Virgil was assigned to create this whole story. As a governing myth, which again, Peter Thiel talks a lot about the governing myths, the national myths that the Straussian elite who utilize the noble lie have to manage to get people's behavior to go in a certain direction or another. And he cites a few examples. He also cites his belief that within the governing myth, and I don't believe this is true, but he cites the idea, the very Gnostic idea, that any kind of good, that any type of emergence of goodness is the consequence of necessary evil. So America had to go and mass murder a bunch of native Native Americans. It had to go and engage in injustice in order to be great. And he says, I love America. America is great. But to be great, you have to do evil. And as soon as you get that equation, it's completely Manichaean. It's very Gnostic, of this universe of light and balanced out by darkness as two equally positive forces, like a positive force of evil and a positive force of good that both necessarily must be treated respectfully and obediently by pious people forever. So you have to somehow have the greatest evil to do the greatest good in your personal life, right? This is where all of the logic of conditioning of the elites within mystery schools comes out of, where they're always trying to merge together moral opposites, the sacred and the profane. They need to get them to become one in some weird fake holistic, unnatural thing. Male feminine energy. They have to try to merge it into some androgynous Baphomet type of stuff, or the idea of sex, which is tied to creation, and murder, which is tied to death, which, by the way, is the substance of a variety of George Sylvester Drake poems that are very disturbing that I cite in my book. But it's very sacred for them to do that. So yeah, it's offsetting.
Yeah, this is Virgil. It's definitely Virgil. It says New Order of the Ages, so that's what it means. It's from the Eclogues, fourth poem, and I think it's the Great Cycle of Ages is born anew. That's what it's from. So Novus Ordo Seclorum. So Musk is using that term, and even 1776 really was kind of a new order for the ages. The constitutional republic really changed the world in a lot of ways. I mean, it's really something else. So these guys are thinking big these days with Trump. But I mean, somebody asking the questions, I don't know if you have any thoughts about this, Matthew, but Johnny asks, any comment on Trump's announcement today on the U.S. AI project to be called Stargate? That name has resonance, interestingly, in the remote viewing field.
Yeah, I don't like that. That pisses me off, actually, when I hear that. Because, for anybody who's looked at how America has been taken over by a satanic cabal, you kind of have to look. It doesn't take you long before you realize that the Aleister Crowley followers around L. Ron Hubbard played an instrumental role, as well as L. Ron Hubbard's. There was a little Scientology offshoot called the Process Church of Final Judgment that were behind the creation of the Church of Satan, the thing that spawned Anton LaVey's second in command, who created the Temple of Set, Michael Aquino, right, who was a believer that he was the reincarnation of Crowley. But then a lot of these figures like Hal Puthoff, Ingo Swann were all very high level and installed. Jacques Vallée was also installed through penetrations into America's intelligence, military intelligence complex, into overseeing a validation of certain superstitious Gnostic beliefs that were promoted by, Helena Blavatsky, Leadbeater, Besant, around, surfing the astral plane and in service of ascended masters, of great white lodges. In the case of the Crowley spin, or the L. Ron Hubbard spin on it, it just became, these galactic federations and disembodied entities that cause all of our neurotic problems and stuff. But these are people who rose very high through the initiatory process of the OT, degrees. Again, Hal Puthoff was 7th degree, as far as I could. Last time I checked, in 1973. He says he since moved on, but I don't think he did. Anyway, a lot of these guys then were bankrolled by Lawrence Rockefeller to create a body of statistical data that would justify a revolution in military affairs around remote viewing, running through walls, integrating quantum mechanics, spooky hullabaloo garbage into mainstream science and even military doctrine, chaos theory garbage, which was never a branch of reputable science, but it just got a lot of money and propaganda, so it became respected. And they integrated these messy theories of the universe into a whole system that was set up through the Stanford Research Institute, that was very much tied to Esalen in Big Sur, California, very much tied to that. And they were creating as many data sets to try to prove that remote viewing is something that the special talent pool, typically from certain bloodlines, certain families, can be induced to get better at, often through trauma-based mind control. A lot of abusive kids who are part of these projects of remote viewing were part of it. Stargate was the name given by Vallée and Puthoff and JL and Hynek, big promoters today of the UFO disclosure operation, as well as Lawrence Rockefeller, who was bankrolling this, as well as on the Russian side, where you had a Russian occult underground that was receiving a lot of money in the 70s by Lawrence Rockefeller to create sort of just fake data on both sides, where they got vetted people to just close their eyes and guess what's on the other side of the card or what's in the room in California if you're in Moscow. And they did that for a few years. They built up a lot of data that looked intimidating because so many volumes of statistics were accumulated, and it was so quantitative that then Michael Aquino, one of the highest above top secret vetted officials in the U.S. military, was able to make the argument to General Stubblebean, who was in charge of, I think he was military intelligence, Army intelligence, to incorporate that into the whole, Stargate project, the Jedi Warriors project at Fort Bragg and Fort Meade, and these other indoctrinated Mithraic Grail super soldier Jedi wannabe idiots who were all like processed in Esalen, given drugs, narcotics, a lot of transcendental meditation, and then brought into the military to try to run through walls. And they made a movie about that, and John Ronson wrote a book about that called Many
Staircoats.
Yeah. It's a fun movie. Weird that the BBC funded it though, so it's probably shady. And but it was real. I mean, true story. That's what they were doing, and then that's what they brought into a total overhaul of the U.S. military when Ronald Reagan was president. And then that sort of created a new vanguard of Mithraic elite fanatic idiots, modern Grail worshipping freaks, to then oversee the planning of Desert Storm, of 9/11, of the Forever Wars, and all this other crap. Who were led to believe in a cosmology that necessitated that you do evil in order to be righteous. So, the fact that I see Trump endorsing that type of revival in the same wording of Stargate with AI embedded into that now as 40 years later, it really angers me. I'm not happy about that at all.
Yeah, it's disconcerting. It's very disturbing. I'd be concerned about that. All those guys too. I just found out, according to Maury Terry, I never could get confirmation of this, but Maury Terry, pretty legit researcher, said that he had proof that Hubbard was initiated into the OTO in 44. So we know he was close to Parsons, but making him an initiate before Dianetics and Scientology, I think, is really something else.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I mean, his son, even though his son a few years later distanced himself from his interview that he gave in 1981 or 83 with Penthouse magazine, and his son L. Ron Hubbard Jr., who changed his name to like Ron Wolf, was pretty explicit when asked like, what did you practice? What was your belief growing up in the household? And he was like very explicit. It was black magic. It was Satanism. That's all we did. It's the only thing that he said really kind of works. And he was a defector of the Scientologists. And, again, you could say right before he died, he puts together this weird publicity statement saying in a very mechanical way, I lied about everything I said. I love my father. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Don't hurt me.
Yeah, right. Exactly. There might be a gun pointed in the back of my head. I know my other brother died suspiciously in a semi so-called suicide with on a dirt road near Las Vegas.
Did that happen? Really?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
cool.
Yeah. He actually didn't like his dad either, so he actually openly insulted L. Ron. So he ended up at an early death. I forgot his name, but it was pretty dangerous. But he also Hubbard admits to knowing Crowley, and there's a recorded audio of him saying, and Aleister Crowley, the great beast, who knew all these philosophies from the 14th, 15th, 16th century. And so he knew, and this is an early recording, one of the early 51, 52 Hubbard recordings. So there's so much evidence about that guy. And
I'd like to I'm actually making a documentary. I'm doing my wife and I are doing a series called The Hidden Hand Behind UFOs, and we're at episode 4 now. That I'm just trying to come up with a script, and it's so hard to make this script, but that I think would be a useful thing to fold into my story. So if I could,
I'll send you the audio. I have it somewhere.
Oh, that would be wonderful. I'd be in your debt.
Yeah.
I would probably use that.
I got it. I just have to go back through some of my old archives. I got a lot of stuff. My archives, I have a lot of really good archives. I had to start reposting them because so much has been suppressed or censored by me that you can't find all the other stuff that I put out on some of these old websites. They're just gone. So,
well, see, William, that's one of the upsides of the Neuralink, man. We could just ultimately upgrade, just stick a little chip in our brains and just take in all of that research you did over 20, 30 years. Just take it all in one shot, a la Matrix.
Maybe sounds it's not all bad. Yeah, scary stuff. But yeah, I mean, there's just so much information here, like the Musk and Andreessen and Thiel and what they're up to. We are at their hand, guys. This is the technocracy. And I think Trump may not have, if he was talking to his son about getting onto these podcasts, he might be kind of an older guy, not as technically astute. So maybe these kind of younger tech overlords, as I call them, might have more of an influence on Trump than is appropriate, I think. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, like I'm not one of those people who paints too many people black and white. I see Trump as a mixture and a somebody who I tend to sense, having spent a lot of time following him in his first term and then reverse engineering and paying attention to what his messaging was over the last couple of decades. I tend to think he's oriented in a positive direction as far as wanting to not destroy the United States and not bring in a death cult. I think that he generally is for those things. But I do also sense that he's not as brilliant as people say. He seems to have earned street smarts over the years of doing business and cutting deals and working internationally. I think you develop a real world knowledge about people, processes, again, how relationships work. That's valuable. But he allows himself to be influenced by some very shady characters. And I do think, some deals were cut behind the scenes to create a situation that we just saw unfold on Monday, where he's now president again. And I'm afraid of what some of those agreements were, what some of those deals were. And I do believe, I'm not all, again, black-pilled about it. I think that there's a lot more space for real conversations about the future and about real ideas to happen now that could not have happened under a Hillary Biden type of technocratic governance system, where it's forget about having these conversations at that point. It's like, so that's good. But then again, you just look at all of these occult, very, very, very bad, powerful players of the modern high priesthood operating within his sphere. And I don't know.
Yeah, it'll be something to watch and wonder. Like, these are interesting guys. Thiel's in the background. Vance is his guy, so Thiel is around pulling strings, and Musk is in the front, and Andreessen is in the wings, and all these other characters are there. So it'll be something to watch. I'm wondering, we're really at the advent of this new technology, AI, that really is going to influence the way we operate. It's going to pervade everything, right? So
yeah,
it's like something we got to watch out for. Matt, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say on that point, like, again, philosophically speaking, I'm all for like AI as a tool, and it's like I see it as if you have a moral, philosophical value system, operational, top down in society that recognizes the sacredness of human life, and that actually has baked into it a human natural law quality, then AI, as far as like machines that can do certain types of use certain algorithms to very quickly look for the precedents that are available to solve problems and that can combine and add something new. That's all fine. There's things that I could see as a great use for, especially if you do want to have a space-based economy, which I do. I think that there's a good way and a bad way of doing that. But, if you do asteroid mining, or you start, let's say, looking at a mining strategy for the moon or Mars or something else, you don't want to put human beings in those types of precarious environments. It's very dangerous, very hostile. Cosmic radiation is bad for living tissue. So yeah, sure, putting sort of AI driven machinery that can learn a little bit in a limited way into dangerous situations, or going deep into the exploring what the hell is below the crust of the earth, that's very dangerous. And sure, machines can help as a secondary support feature for a society, but I think the problem is that we've come into a place where people have lost a sense of like how the human mind is qualitatively transcendental to machines. So we get very easy, people become very persuaded too easily that Elon Musk is correct and we will be made extinct by the natural, almost demonic evolution of these machines that will necessarily, a la Matrix, look upon us as an inferior life form to be thus exterminated because we're a virus. That's how they think. And from my standpoint, I'm like, no, it's the machine can only do deductive and inductive reasoning skills, which is fine as tools that every human mind should know how to do those things. But we're not limited, if we choose not to be, by deductive or inductive reasoning. We have this quality of creative inspiration, love, these things that allow us to go outside of the limits of deductive, inductive logic, which machines cannot do. They just don't have access to the soul. They can't make those leaps to something like a machine can only get more data, but it can't figure out what the mechanism is governing the harmonics within the solar system, or what's inside of the sun, or what's inside of the galaxy. It can only take what's already been known and maybe add more quantity to it. So yeah, to the degree that we lose sight in the difference between human beings and animals, or human beings and machines, we become susceptible to fascism, and we will become convinced that AI is going to be the new thing to rule over us as new lords, which I think is always going to be just a, like when I think of Thiel and his Silicon Valley cults, they want to use the image of AI as a cover to hide their actual human agendas. Because if we believe that there's this, this infinite wall of demonic AI making our decisions and allotting our social credits for us based on our behavior, we won't ever bother pondering who's really running the show, who's behind the curtain. We'll never ask the question, and that's what they want, as modern high priests. Yeah.
Scary times. Well, we had over 600 listeners on X, so we had a lot of people interested in the guest and the topic of Musk and Thiel. Very timely topic.
Sweet.
We are at the hour mark. Matthew, where's do you want anything you'd like to add or anything I missed before we wrap it up?
No, that's good. Thanks, Ben. Thanks for providing the platform, and I'm looking forward to our next chat where I'm going to interview you. And I know we still have to talk about the Knights of Malta and other stuff down the line, so we'll do that. Yeah, I guess if people want, I'm really encouraging people to take the dive into my trilogy of the Revenge of the Mystery Cult. So I'm happy that you've had it floating there in front of people's faces, and it's available as paperback, Kindle, PDFs. If people want some hard signed copies, my wife and I can sign and send if you send us an email through our websites, CanadianPatriot.org or RisingTideFoundation.net. Net. Those are the two things. And then obviously there's the my Substack that people have been looking at throughout our discussion, which is available for free stuff and paid upgrades too. So.
Right. So you can see what's going on with Matthew at the Canadian Patriot, and then also at Substack. I'll put that there, links to the show. And thank you so much for your time. Great work, and congrats on the trilogy. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you.
Thanks everybody for listening. So go check out Matthew's stuff, and you guys have a great one. Thank you. All right, stay there.